to order. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to do a roll call.
Okay. Roy Martin,
Here.
Tanya Hogan, here. Beverly Rose,
Here.
John DeBoyer,
Here.
Mark Burchard,
Here.
Sarah Clemens.
Here.
All right, so we're going to open up a public comments on the algae wheel. If you guys want to come up and explain on that, anybody. All right, we'll move to unfinished business. So we're going to open up for discussion on the algae wheel, and this is what the workshop was designed for. So anybody that has any information that you can present to the board on the algae wheel, we would like to have you come up and speak, and please give that forward on that.
Bill Meldrum with Project Control Engineering. So just to kind of give an update onto what we've been doing for just since the grant writing session has started with the CDS fundings. So we've already made application for $4 million from Lisa McLean's office. And then currently we're submitting for the same amount from the other two, Slotkin and Peters. But I've met with all three of them in small sessions. It seems to me that I'm feeling very confident that McLean's going to issue us $2.5 million, and then $1 million each from the other two. I've also passed out a little flyer to you guys showing you what we would propose to do if that funding is obtained. And it shows installing a collection system for 85 residents, back to the full-scale size of plant to obtain that. I think at this point, it's probably best for us to sit back and wait for this funding to be approved. I'm going to be in the assumption it's going to take at least 6 weeks for that before we get notified that we've been approved to go to appropriation. So, but I'm very confident after my meetings that that's the level of funding that we're going to get at this time.
So, Bill, you think we will know on our funding in 6 weeks, or that's just when it moves forward to?
Yeah, once you're selected and move forward, it's very likely you're going to get the funding once it's approved to go to appropriations level. It's very rare for them to reject it at that time. Sometimes they will make adjustments to the amount of the funding at appropriations, but at the level prior to appropriations, that's why I put in for $4 million from each one of them, was to allow them to have some, room to go above what I told them the minimum was going to be needed to build this plant and the collection system to service 85 people, or 85 septic fields to be removed from their floodplain.
So the original design, you mentioned last time we spoke about changing the transmission of the waste to the algae wheel. Can you explain that a
Different
little bit?
collection system.
Yeah, suction.
So I'm currently meeting with them to discover whether this system is going to be able to provide not just for this 85, but for like Phase 2 or Phase 3, if it becomes instituted. It has to be scalable. So they're working on the numbers now. But basically what that system is instead of using a force main to send the sewage to the plant, it's going to be a vacuum system. And the vacuum system works way differently. There's less maintenance cost after installation. We don't have to provide power to any of the homes. And basically what it is they place a pod, underground pod, that collects from up to 4 homes in each pod. And that system, the pods work without power, and when that pod fills up with water, it basically shorts out a solenoid that opens a trap door that exposes it to a vacuum system. The main vacuum portion of the plant would be added to the footprint of where the wastewater treatment plant would be. And it's all controlled from that point. Maintenance costs on those pods are like $50 if the solenoid goes bad. But you look at it this way, where we're not installing additional control panels on homes, we're not installing additional grinder pumps and a force main that has to be maintained. Going forward, that would be an additional expense to each property owner. Once it's installed, they would obviously have to take care of that and maintain that for eternity, right? Where this system doesn't require that. This system is also used at like Cedar Point and other island locations where they are actually just putting a suction into a collection system, and every time one of those pods opens up, it just draws from that pod. It's not like when you go into the restroom on an airplane where you flush the toilet. That's the same vacuum system. It's the same style anyway. It's only a much larger scale. You know how in that restroom of an airplane, it just sucks it right out of there, right? So that it has no effect on the functionality of your home's individual plumbing system. It's still a gravity. We still have to bring it out to the road by gravity, and by gravity it goes into the pod. So in discussions with him, it's going to be a significant savings in the cost. We're not talking just 10 grand or something like that. We're not saving that. And it's not just based on the maintenance issue. It's the fact that it's going to be a lot cheaper.
So there'd be no grinder pumps?
I don't have a number on that yet. I'm still in conversations with them. They're trying to design, they already have the plans, and the company that I sent this to completely designs it, installs it, commissions it, and trains people on its operation. Very low maintenance on this system.
Do you know if the size of the pod is in relationship to the length of pipe?
I do not. The diameter of the pipe is still going to be roughly the same as what the force main would be. And it's got a little bit different style of installation. It's called a sawtooth style installation, where there's peaks and valleys in the pipe, and that is necessary to create the proper vacuum.
So there'd be no need for grinder pumps at all?
Nope.
Okay, what about septic tanks? Would that still be required?
Nope.
It's totally going to bypass septic tanks?
Yep, you take it right up, you pull the plumbing off. Probably our biggest hurdle is getting the gravity from the house to the right-of-way edge, right? Because that's where you want to have these pods. And in realistic thinking, we're probably going to get 2 houses per pod, because you're not going to have enough to bring it all the way over to one side of the street. 4 houses gravity into one pod. So, but there'll be certain circumstances where we can get 4. That's the maximum each pod can handle.
Okay, and these numbers that we have here, Does that take into consideration sizing of the pipe if we were to expand into additional phases?
Yes, that allows for the collection system to that point would be scaled in a size to meet capacity needs for phase 2 and 3.
And then we do have some costs here. Does that take into consideration money that's already been spent on parts for Algae Wheel as far as these equipment costs? Because we have a credit there.
We got a
currently.
deposit, yep, we got a
Right.
deposit with equipment, and that's just based on the Algae Wheel. It doesn't have anything to do with the collection system.
So are these numbers strictly the collection system?
No,
Okay.
Those numbers are for the plant.
So
Yeah,
so
so
that's what
it's-
I'm asking, where it says, like, for example, equipment costs, does that number take into consideration our credit with Algae Wheel for our plant?
No, that's the overall cost.
Okay.
Yeah. And that estimate does not include any cost for the vacuum system. So we'd be backing out the costs for the grinder pump system and force main system, and in place of that, we would add to it the cost for the vacuum system.
Can you get us an actual number on that later on?
Yeah, I mean, they're working on it,
So you going to have any difficulty with the step system on the laying the pipe?
No. This can be generally, you still have to deal with a little bit of whatever you consider would be the frost level over there. So we still have to work within that range, but depths are not an issue. I'm understanding, usually they're put in anywhere from, depending on their own, environmental concerns, but they're put in anywhere from 2 foot deep to 4 foot deep, so each sawtooth has to have like a minimum of 2 feet elevation change every so many feet, every 100 feet or whatever the design would be.
As long as you don't run into any old barn foundations, right?
Right, well, go through them then, right? We find a way through them.
So we talked about expansion of the system, but I want to refer back to the business district where we had, 12, I think, or something like that. Is there a way we can service those first and then extend and finish the project after we get those in operation?
I would think that would be possible, to build it to a certain point. The problem with that is that all the installation will probably be happening simultaneously. So I'm not seeing that the plant will be done before the collection system.
Oh, okay.
I think it'd be the other way around. The collection system would probably be completed prior to the plant operations in reality. So yes, I guess, we could try to shoot for something like that. It would definitely be the first zone that would be opened up.
Okay.
I have a couple questions, if I could add to it.
Sure.
If you receive the funding, in 6 weeks, you'll have an idea, how long would it take to get the funding after that? Just a guesstimate. Is it a year, is it 6 months?
I would say probably 6 months for sure.
Okay.
Because after that, after appropriations, it still has to be, for the funds we're requesting, still has to be signed by the president. I mean, ultimately, it has to go to him in the end.
Right.
And we all know how busy that guy is.
Yeah. But now, if you had the funding, if it does come through, and you is it enough to build what you want to build? Or we still need more money?
Yes, but I have to caution council that all these grants are 80/20 grants. So, meaning, we're gonna have to put up 20%, right? So, there's other sources that we can go to funding for that. And, I highly recommend that, once we know what our number is from these other three sources, so that we can get a feel for how much money we're gonna need, we should be going after some additional funding to help you guys cover that 20%. That 20% is not something you're going to want to, put on all the residents, right? So, there's other sources where we can try to get grants from to cover that additional 20%.
And they're willing, because they've reached out, and they have willing, at what you're talking about, the additional grants, because they've reached out and let us know that when the time comes that there is something available there. So it's not like it's a definite no. So they're reaching out, telling us that if you get that far, we have additional funding that you can get, so.
Now, if the funding comes through and the design work's all done, how long, just rough guess, what is it going to take to build this thing?
Well, we've got some design people that are working on some of that. John, I don't know if you could maybe say something with that?
Well, previously, the plans were probably 75–80% complete, and we were waiting for the next go-around with Eagle to do a review. We had initial review comments, and we never got back to them because the project stalled at that point, changed directions.
Well, we're not
So-
looking for, the question was, is it going to be done in 2 years, 3 years? We can't change yesterday.
Right. No, we're not looking for that. I guess some of it has to be said for the amount of efforts that we're going to be going through with Eagle to create a time frame of, meeting all their conditions, right?
So it's years.
If we were put today to have a shovel in the ground, say the plans were all said and done, this thing's going to take at least a year to complete. So whatever time frame it takes, we've got 6-7 weeks before we even know if we're going to, qualify for this funding. And I'm very confident we are in the amounts of 2.5 and 1 and 1, right? So that's going to get us close. We've got to do some consideration on what's remaining on the MEDC grant, so that can be added to it. I think that's going to get us very close to being there. And then we got to worry about the 20% for the township's portion of this funding, and obtain those funds, and then design the plant to the value of the money that we actually know we have, instead of designing the plant in hopes that we're going to get that funding, We don't want to burn up any more money doing any design work until we know specifically how big we're going to be able to build. And that's going to be based on how much funding we're going to be able to obtain.
Right. In this 85 location where you're looking to build the initial project, is there another footprint that the plant could go on?
Currently, it's slated for the original site that was selected.
Right. But PCE did a site study and to look at alternative sites. Was there an alternative site?
I'll defer that to John.
Nothing was ever confirmed. We looked at and evaluated for wetlands and other issues on various sites, but it never got to a point. There was probably a couple of spots that we had an opportunity to do something, but it never got followed through to the end, because we were
Well,
continuing
the bill got
using the
paid.
site.
didn't you submit something? You charged $10,000 to do a site study. When did the study
We did
have
multiple
recommendations?
studies. We did multiple studies on sites to see what was available, but then it becomes an issue with the property owners, whether they're willing to do it or not, based on, locations of wetlands or what it would look like on their site. So it never got pursued any further than that. But would I say, is it possible to find something else? Yeah, I think so.
Well, can I, this is just jumped in, something I'm really concerned about is I've never seen the plan for where this is going. We had, when I went door to door, as best as I could figure, just over 50% of the people would go with this if it didn't cost them $1. And some people do not want to hook into. We have like 9, and if you went with the LaCroix Street and William Street, brand new septic fields there. The one girl backs up to ours, she just spent $30,000 on her septic field. She didn't want no part of this. But one of the problems we had too is by the previous supervisor, I'll just say it that way, told me we had permission and the guys really wanted it on Maple Street. As John will tell you, we've never gotten we'd have to take the property from them, they're so avidly against it. So 85 people, would they have to connect to share I've just been aware, my mind's going to jump here a little, but I was talking to people who would run the plant afterwards. It was originally thrown out $25,000 to $35,000 to run the plant. Turns out with the permit that was given to Eagle, I've gotten 2 prices just off the cuff from the people who run the Oak Club plant and another gentleman that used to work here in Algae, and they're saying that just for the testing and the running of it, $150,000 a year with the discharge that the plant would have with whatever was sent to Eagle.
Yeah, the testing, right? Yeah.
And so if you got 85 people, more than half of them won't connect to it unless they're forced to, which we've been trying to avoid forcing people to do this. Who's going to pay for this plant to run it?
We've been running into the same issues on that question also. So our numbers are a little bit different than what you've gotten. We've gotten that the first couple of years, it's probably going to be around $80,000 to operate that plant, and that includes all the testing that's going to be required by Eagle. But understand that those testing requirements, once the plant's proven that it's going to function according to design, the Eagle testing requirements will be backed off. They could be backed off to very significantly, which would, the major portion of that cost, that $80,000, is for testing, the major portion of it. Now, I think I know who you're referring to that used to work at the Algae plant. We've talked to some other plant operators also, and they're stating that, their trips over there are what's going to cost it. And this plant is designed to be self-sustaining, self-running, but does need to be monitored, right? So monitored, they could ultimately be only going over there once or twice a week to make sure everything's functioning properly. It's going to have alerts and alarms on it, so if something does go wrong, they'll be notified and be able to respond immediately. So to answer your question, I think that we're all in this situation where we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the operations. Building is one thing, right? But, you've got future costs, and those have to be addressed. So we've been running the same numbers against the same population that you're looking at over there, and, it's going to be substantial if it's just borne by them alone.
I have a question. So, say we have 85 hookups. What if we have, say, half of those people opt out not to hook up? Is the plant going to be able to function?
So that's also another question that we're staying in communication with Algae to make sure that during the winter months when you have your least amount of residents there, right, you're going to have, that's going to be your least amount of flow. And that plant has to function, and its byproduct has to meet Eagle requirements under that low flow condition. So we have to make sure really paying attention to how much flow we're actually going to be able to provide this plant to do its job. I understand the more flow, the better it works. That's what I understand to be. But you know, we need to stay in close contact and communication with Algae Wheel on that and make sure that we give them the full scenario on what's the anticipations are. But Bruce, you just mentioned that there was people that said, well, I would join on to it if it didn't cost me a dime. Well, the thing is that, you know, the operations would cost them, but maintaining that grinder pump station, that's why I wanted to try and get into this vacuum thing.
The people, most of the people did not want to connect, even at the 50%. I had nowhere near 50%. I only had like 11 that wanted to connect in the original, that would not fight it going past their property if it didn't cost them a dime. There are very few people who want to connect to this if you actually talk to them. Because why would you if you have a working septic system? Want to get another bill every month?
Now, I have a question for that. Is that working septic working now? What about when high water was here? Because I heard the emergency manager wanted to shut down the island when the water was high because
I've
of,
never heard that at all. And I can tell you this, I'm just talking to Eagle, they can never find 1 part per million different below the island than above the island when they do their checking.
All right.
So, just throw that up there. But the thing I'm worried about is we never, because obviously we wanted this for the town, we had it set up to do just this little plant, which doesn't require near the testing, that this big plant, because I was really taken back by that. And Nick came up with 130, the people at Oakville flat out told us 200,000 to come over to the island and do the testing. I don't want to force people to do things they don't want to.
Right.
So 85 people, where are you going to find those 85 people to hook to that, to even spread the cost out?
Those are just the number of RUs that were counted within the service district.
Right.
Yep.
And
We
how
haven't,
much you forcing to
I
connect
don't,
with it?
I don't know that we've actually gone door to door knocking and doing a
Well, I
survey.
think John right here can tell you we had problems with the easements. We couldn't even get to the plant because people were fighting us when it started to expand. Nobody on Maple Street signed a waiver to get to the plant. We had to take it from them.
Right, I don't want to flip around eminent domain too much, but you know what I'm saying. I get where you're going with that, and those are all great things for us to make sure we pay attention to, and maybe that should be something we should go over and do a survey and just poll everybody over there when we can get a chance to get over there and
Definitely.
meet them, you know?
Something I think should be done is like registered letters sent to everybody who owns property in that district. Because one of the things that I got hit with was they said they were talked to by the township. And one guy gave me a lot of sign language. He says, the people on Maple Street aren't there in the winter. They
Right.
came back and they heard about this from the neighbors and they just had a meltdown. And I said, well, they said they talked to you. And they said, no one ever talked to us. I'd like to know that somebody wants this, because I don't want to know. Obviously, the downtown district, the commercial does want it. We've been behind it 100%.
Yep.
I want to know when it became this grandiose plan when no one wanted it. So far, I've talked to 6 people on the South Channel that want this, and that's because they need a septic system, and they're figuring they'll get this for free. With all the new septic systems that went in on the island, I don't blame the people for not wanting to connect to it. Why did this become a bigger plan?
It always was a bigger one.
No, it wasn't.
The original-
The original was $2 million to do 8 businesses. That was all it was for.
It was just supposed to be for Sands using downtown, not for residents, it was just going to be for business, from what we were told.
That was, you can go back and watch the tapes.
I recall the original plan that I was working with Anthony on, the original plan, was for a plant to be built to handle up to 200 properties. That's
That was not.
that's the original plan that was in our office when we
Well, I don't
first
know
started
when-
looking at this.
When we asked Senator Hertel for the money, when
Right.
I looked at it, before Artie was involved, we were just talking to 8 businesses. Because when I told John that we can just get a containerized plant, they rent them for $3,500 a month and get us permits for that. I don't know when it became this more grandiose plan, but the problem I'm having, and I have no problem with if people want it, but I can tell you they don't.
Right.
Just knock on the door.
I think that's a great idea to do that, and either we send it by mail or, you know, we go knocking for people that we haven't heard back from to see what their take is on it. the best thing is to make sure you have an informed public, right? So I would like to make sure that the people that are going to be, have the option to connect to this are aware of what their potential costs are. You know, how much is it, and, because that's the way they can figure out their budgeting on, well, what's it cost me to take care of my septic field? And, you know, what's it cost me every time, you know, we get high water and I have, you know, my own backups, right? As opposed to this system just taking it away. So, you know, I agree with you, Bruce, that we need to do that to make sure that we're seeing what kind of number we're actually going to get connected as opposed to what we hope to get connected.
Let's do it this way. You take William Street, LaCroix Street, and Maple Street. I could probably get 14 to 18 to connect to it. If that's in your 85, your numbers are way off. Then when I start hearing these numbers that have come up more recently of taking the low one, Nick's, 130,000 for the testing, let alone pump breaks in the plant, whatever.
Right.
You start talking, splitting that up, then you're talking 10 grand a year per address just to run the plant.
Yeah, even at 80,000, if 80 people hooked up, that's still $1,000, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's not
Yeah.
making sense when it started to
Right.
expand. And as much as we want it, I don't want to force people into a situation like that. You will be forcing them to do that because everyone we talk to, if you guys watch the tapes from original meetings, if it's free, they, you know, what if they let it go across the property, but we had very little interest in connecting to it. Because most of the places in that district have already put in the new build-up septic fields, and if the water gets high enough to mess with those septic fields, we're walking the water to get to the house anyway.
Right.
Because they're so much higher than, and as far as, I just replaced some grinder pumps for a couple of friends of mine, and geez, that takes 15 minutes, and one was in 31 years, and it was about a week later, the other one was in, because they put two fields in next to each other. And that's the first time they got replaced. Because considering almost everybody in that district, we don't have any year-round people.
Right.
And that's the other thing, when I asked you to check the flows for the area, talk to Algae Wheel, talk to Joe, talk to Kevin. For the life of me, I can't figure out how you're coming up with enough flows in it, because
I
take
sent
those
them over to-
addresses on what's being used this time of year. You can go down the South Channel, you can hook up 85 places, you're gonna have 7 and the business.
Yeah, and I looked at that same flow plan that they sent over with all the addresses that use water during the winter, and I'm coming up with at least 50% of those people are non-existent in the winter. At least 50.
Not nowhere near that, 'cause I can.
Yeah, that was just a quick glance. I was just, you know, trying to look through all the months. You know, there's so many on there, right, for the whole year. And you know, it was at least 50%. I'm not going to tell you that maybe it's only 20% are full-time there. I didn't really get into the math. I just glanced at it.
Algae Wheel, that's gonna be a real problem. If you build a plant big enough to take it on for the summer, how do you deal with it in the winter when it
Right.
goes back to?
Now, I believe when I talked to Algae Wheel, that was the opposite of what you told me there. They said there wasn't enough flow with 8 on a smaller system
No,
to do that.
If we put in a containerized system, there's plenty of flow, but not in the type of system you're talking.
Is there anybody from Algae Wheel?
Is there some, who's here from Algae Wheel? They're the ones that said they couldn't make it. Oh, right here.
We're the local representative for
Yes.
Algae Wheel. I don't work directly for the company.
Where are you from, sir?
I'm from Oakland County,
What's the firm?
Solberg, Knowles and Associates.
Okay.
You spend a lot of money. We haven't met before. I've only talked to Kevin. You aren't, Joe, or
I am Joe.
you are Joe? Okay.
Yes.
Then you do know the conversations that have had with the flows. There's no problem with the containerized plant, was there, if we did the small greenhouse?
I don't want to add confusion to the discussion. There's been many plans tossed around. I would just say that balancing flows and loadings between transient populations, because Harson's Island is not terribly different than Port Austin and some of the other places we do work. That's part of the process of designing and selecting technologies for wastewater treatment plants.
And just a short answer on that, though, that for downtown, in the summer, we're gonna have about 4 tops, absolutely tops, if we stayed with the original plans, to businesses, I'm gonna throw the number out, 4,000, I'll drop to about 1,000 in the winter, 1,000 gallons a day.
Yeah, if you're talking an 8-connection facility is a completely different design than an 80-connection facility.
I understand that. And then also the testing is different, because that's when we ran into, and I saw with the state and started to call around, that we start dumping 12,000 gallons in, then you're on daily testing. But to answer the question, to make sure he's not thinking of BS them, because we've talked a lot, and I actually have pictures of the plant from, I don't know who the guy in England is who sent them over, to put a containerized system inside a greenhouse, and gave him the flows, and he said it would work just fine. And I think you know who I'm talking about. I forgot his name at this point. I'm not being argumentative, I'm looking for an answer.
I just I would want to caveat anything that I say with the statement that I'm not a professional engineer,
Oh,
okay?
you were
So
just the
we're-
salesperson for that.
Well, we're a wastewater equipment supplier, and so when we talk about bringing equipment together to supply wastewater treatment plants, which we do for like GLWA and Oakland County Water Resources Commission, you have to fit the technology to the application. Now, if there was an applications engineer, I'm not familiar with this particular conversation you're talking about. If there was an application engineer that sized the wastewater treatment to the flow and loading with a known input, I would defer to them on their sizing and selection.
Okay. And then when you talked, you did talk to this gentleman and to Kevin, correct?
One of them was, I talked to so many people, Bruce, I have to,
Believe me,
and them guys that you had given me them numbers, I did speak with them. And it could have been one of them that had told me that, because I'm like, it's completely opposite of what you had originally told me.
Kevin had told me, he said, what we'd be better off doing is basically, and this is a layman's term, putting these package plants or containerized plants in series, and only running one, if it was to get this bigger plant. For the original though, the one plant they designed, and you guys got pictures of that when all these gentlemen were here, of that facility when it was still just trying to keep it the commercial district.
Everybody that I've talked to, that you have given me, any of the professionals in it, if I'm speaking out of turn here, they suggest that this goes back to the 80 homes. Even the people that are funding this to, anyone that I've been in contact, that's what they recommend this goes back to work properly.
Did you ask them in the context that the 80 homes would only be 10 in the summer, and there's an 85, just so I keep it, and then 70 not being on it, because that creates a problem?
Correct. And then whoever I had spoke to at that time, it may have been Joe, and that's where the engineering and the sizing the plant to these 85 and the water flows. I had given Bill the water flows of the hookups that we had from the meter reads here. And like you said, it comes into who wants to hook up, and at the end of the day, why wouldn't you want to hook up? The value of your home's better, the whole thing is, right? So I've been on a septic tank my whole life. If I had municipal sewer, it wouldn't be hands down a no-brainer that I would hook into it. So I get why you wouldn't and why you wouldn't. Now, like I had spoke earlier, now you have there was carbon credits that weren't even included in paying for the end of the day of the plant. Now we will have a DDA that will capture its own money, that we can help offset the funding of that. So as far as operational cost, we could be at that point. And like I said, that's anybody that I've talked to, all your contacts that you had sent me, and the rest of them are in my office, that they go back to the bigger plant is the best option. That's why
When you talk to them, you have to put in context of them understanding that the houses would not be only for normally it's Labor Day and Memorial Day.
Right.
People are on the island.
And that's what I had sent over right now, whatever you have on residents
But
that we're on for flow right
I've
now.
never seen the plan for where everything's supposed to go, but one of the reasons I kept this going on our end, on the island, people on Maple Street said they were never contacted, and they're actually fighting us. And I cannot see if you put this up for a district vote. Isn't that what you usually do when you create a district? Put up, you haven't got a chance in hell if this passes. Because, well, Artie flat out says, who on the South Channel wants this? And he gave me a name, and the gentleman, his words were, you're putting words in my mouth. I think it's a hell of an idea, but no way I want to connect to it.
So this is the map, correct map, right, Bill?
What's that?
This is the correct map, is what we had planned, right here, right?
Yeah.
So we'd be picking.
This is what was submitted to,
Eagle?
for the grants.
All right, so we'd be going from LaCroix to Green, Donald, we'd pick William Street up, we'd pick Maple Street up, we'd pick Oak Street up, Elm Street, South Channel Drive, Poplar, and then it would run to, on South Channel would be Tajmu to, what was it? Bill?
Bar Harbor.
Bar Harbor.
How far up LaCroix would they go?
LaCroix is picked up to past Green Drive,
Looks like 2 Green Drive.
or 2 Green Drive.
So the flow studies,
Close to that is one last plan I see, it didn't include Poplar Street. There are people on Poplar Street that would want.
so the flow studies that were done, did you just take meter readings from?
Took meter readings of last month or however, and they
Did
had
you
their
do
shut-offs.
Did you do a summer and a winter?
No, we only did the winter, and that's what I had sent over to Bill for.
What were those numbers? Do you remember?
I don't,
Like per day?
I don't remember. I don't remember what they were.
I mean, that kind of gives us, if we had those numbers, then I could ask you, is that an issue as far as flows? You know what I mean?
Well, so generally, sorry, you'd want to define your wastewater input, and then the designers will come and the loadings would be known. You deal with seasonality changes with equalization. You feed a known rate into the plant, and then the biology does the rest.
Okay, so if our flows are 5,000 gallons a day in the wintertime and 30,000 in the summertime, that's not an issue?
No, that's common problem. That's typical of wastewater. Every wastewater plant in the state is dealing with.
Understand,
wildly
but Harson's
differentiating-
Island is strictly seasonal, so that there's a huge fluctuation.
Yep. Another example, Port Austin, campgrounds. They
Sure.
have distributed sewer plants that treat wastewater. Any college town in the state is going to have wildly differentiating populations in their town.
Okay, so that's not an issue.
It's not an issue. It's
Okay.
something that we commonly deal with in wastewater design.
So if we go with the 85 hookups, having with the majority not wanting to hook up, that should not be an issue with the plant running? Or do we need the 85 hookups to run the plant?
So what she's saying is if they have 10 hookups to the plant and there's 85 possible, that would not be a problem.
Yeah, you have to plan for the variations in flow seasonally. So if you have an equalization tank and then you feed it in at a known rate, you would have that. You have redundant trains. There's different ways to deal with these issues. Also, when you build a plant, brand new greenfield plant, in the beginning, you're not getting as much flow in anyway. There's ability to feed BOD, as the folks in the back know. If you have to give some extra food to the biology to keep it alive, that's possible. There's things you can do operationally to keep plants moving along. The short answer to your question is yes, it's not necessarily a problem. We just have to understand what the reality of the inputs are going to be.
So then the operation cost could potentially go up because we would have to do different things to it to continue it running?
It's
Properly?
not unheard of to feed a BOD chemical like a glycerin or something, right, Brent? Right? To supplement the food to mass ratio.
And you can boost that BOD biologically with chemicals that you'd add.
It's not an extreme cost. We're talking small plants here, something you'd get in a 55-gallon barrel drum.
Okay.
Okay, so I know we've got some Eagle representatives here. Thank you for coming today.
Sure.
So how does our flows or our size or our capacity affect what you people are going to tell us our permit requires as far as testing frequencies, so we can have an idea on what our operational costs are going to be once this thing was in place.
Sure. So I'm Andy Hart.
Yeah, can you come up, Andy?
Yeah, sure. Okay, my name's Andy Hart. I'm one of the district supervisors in the water division. Those are all great questions, and I can't answer a single one of them.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Well, your folks need to get with the Part 41 folks, who are Laura Verona and Kip Mitchell.
Okay.
So Kip Mitchell's been very involved in this project. So when the project gets a little more mature, I think you got to approach Kip to talk about what needs to be done to achieve the design that achieves the permit limits.
Andy, Gus Vasquez was also looking at the collection system too.
Oh, okay.
So two separate.
Yeah, so Gus Vasquez, both Gus and Kip work for Laura. Laura Verona's the supervisor of the wastewater unit.
And Roy, I think you just received an email from Laura with the email chains from what was sent to PCE prior to the transition to the other company.
Correct.
So she just sent you that. So that's kind of where our review stopped.
Yeah.
And well, started and stopped.
So Alexis and I work in the unit that does all the structure work in the waters. Boathouses, dredging, bridges, culverts, wetland fill, floodplain occupation. Alexis worked on the actual site to put the algae wheel site on wetlands. The site study was probably required in part due to our requirement that they look for a non-wetland lot.
Now,
So-
is that the permit that was told to be stopped?
Yes.
So
Yep.
all of Eagle's applications, so 301, 303, so 303 is wetlands protections, 301 is where the discharge is, right, inland lakes and streams.
And all of them were told to be stopped?
That one is withdrawn by the former supervisor, and then both the 41 applications have been withdrawn as well.
So the Part 41 is the actual discharge. That's the actual water discharge.
Who do I get in contact to move that forward, or do you got to reapply, or?
Yep, so that's the people that Andy's mentioning, right? Kip Mitchell and Gus Vasquez, they are the analysts underneath Laura Verona. You would have to just go through my Enviro portal to submit, submit,
I would start with an email communication.
yeah.
I would, just on the Part 41, it wasn't dropped. What happened was, they said, well, it was.
That was-
It was dropped because they said if we would have let it continue, that was when Bennett was still involved, that if you get turned down, it's a lot harder. It was basically put on hold, so it wasn't turned down.
I believe it was stopped before Benash.
So,
We often give people the opportunity to withdraw their request when it's something that we can't permit.
Right, that's what we, and the letter was, that's why that was done, because that came, and they said, we'll put it on hold, not.
Right.
It's
So that's the
turned
Part
down.
41
Turned
permit.
down.
The
So-
wetland permit, we were very close to issuing.
okay, so on the 41,
Yep.
is it withdrawn currently with
Yes.
Eagle?
Yes.
It's not on hold?
No applications open with
Okay,
Eagle right
can you
now.
tell me when that was withdrawn?
You would have to ask Kip Mitchell.
Yeah.
I know ours was withdrawn, like the wetlands and the inland lakes and streams application was withdrawn, September
Something like that.
Did you withdraw, John, or did,
2025.
2025.
I did not.
so it was after Bennett? 'cause
Okay,
they
so,
allowed that to keep
so who has the authority to withdraw that?
So we asked the applicant, and the current applicant, well, that applicant was Mr. Cassidy.
So our
Township.
township supervisor withdrew it?
Yes,
In September.
yes.
Probably at our request.
Yeah, we
That's what I'm
requested it because, like.
Was just sitting, it had been sitting for over a year.
Yeah, so our review is the wetland impact, right? Square footage, acreage of wetland impact. To be able to finalize that, we need to have the 41 people approve the footprint of the facility itself. So that's like
Right.
the, cart before the horse.
So the wetland program's not willing to issue a wetland impact till we know the facility can actually be built there.
And at what capacity, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and these all the questions of who's tying into it, what's the flow, what's the low flow. That's all that goes into, the 41 review that ties into the wetland review.
Okay.
So we're like the last step almost.
Okay.
So project cost could be reduced if a non-wetland site was found for the facility. The cost of the project is being increased because we are going to ask that the wetland impact be offset somehow, probably with some type of mitigation. That costs money.
Can I ask you this? If we went with the small plant, the containerized thing, that we did get an agreement, because I was in that phone whatever you do when you're all sitting looking at TV. And if we stayed under a certain size, that we would be.
Yeah, I know. Anthony pulled us over the coals for some kind of guarantee. We generally waive mitigation for under 1/10 of an acre of impact. I cannot make any guarantee on that, but generally that's our practice. Under 1/10. Yep.
It's very small. And that's everything too. That's the impact of the pipe, that's the, you know. that's-
Wetland impact, wetland impact.
Gentlemen, there was like 4 people on the screens when we had that meeting, and they were saying that, but it sounds like they're willing to work with us for less than 1/3 of an acre or so many. I understand
So the state law basically requires Eagle to require mitigation for impacts over 1/3 of an acre. 1/3 of an acre or below, we have some discretion to waive that.
that's what they were saying.
1/10 of an acre and below, we usually waive that and not require mitigation. From 1/10 to 1/3, there's discretion. From 1/3 and over, there's no discretion. The law requires
I
it.
assume somebody had talked to you about that meeting we had, since you're the one who was actually on the island.
Okay, was I in the meeting?
I don't
You were.
think so.
Oh.
You were in the meeting?
It was.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at all those little
You
squares.
And, Kyle,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and.
I'm in a lot of meetings.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna know that. But, the 1/3 of an acre was the thing that was thrown out there that they're gonna try to work with us on.
Yeah. We need to see a design.
Which.
Less is better.
designs That you guys at one point did have for that greenhouse, and.
Yeah, we were close to issuing the wetland permit.
That's what I have on it, Bruce. That's what I got left here in the office
I know, I physically handed you.
This is
guys
what I
that
put
walked around
together.
and handed you.
since, so.
Are you talking about the Benesh stuff, Bruce?
It was actually, I think, Algae wheel.
Oh, was it?
Somebody sent us a picture anyway of a greenhouse with a package plant inside of it. And that would take with all the connections and everything under 30.
I'll go so far as to say that it would be non-typical for the manufacturer to drive the bus on a wastewater treatment plant installation.
I think
That's
that's
why we
what
have all
I'm-
these gentlemen here from PCE, because it's really important, because Michigan state environmental regulations are specific to Michigan. So you have to have local people that know how to navigate that stuff and tie these systems together in such a way. We play an important role, but we're not the end-all be-all.
I think the only reason that what my take on it is, Algae Wheel has been so involved with this, and the gentleman who owns Algae Wheel, he wants a plant in Michigan bad, so because right now it's not approved technology, correct here?
There's algae wheel plants in the United States. The closest one is in Indiana, northern Indiana. The former, there were folks from Clay Township at one point that went to go see a plant in New York. They have been in a company in operation for, God, probably 20 years
I
now. and
understand
have
that, but they
a
don't
dozen
have
plants.
one in Michigan, and it's a new technology, and
That-
Michigan operates under a lot different rules.
Well, so yeah, there's no algae wheel currently operating in Michigan. There'll probably be a technology review by Eagle. They're aware of the technology. There was a preliminary report made. But yeah, that's part of the Part 41 process these guys are talking about, is the review of that technology.
I think that's why Algae Wheel got so involved here, rather than the horse and the cart.
Yeah, and then at one point, then the manufacturer has to show the math, right? And then that's what gets reviewed by the state. They have the ability to do that. They've done it other places. At the end of the day, when we say new technology, wastewater, for the most part, you're growing biology either floating in a basin and blowing air into it, or you're growing biology on a fixed film media of some sort. This would be a fixed film media, so there's textbook values that dictate that stuff, and those people will navigate showing proof of concept, and all of the stuff that goes into the in-the-weeds mathematical part of creating the wastewater treatment plant process. That gets handled through the professional engineers to the state.
Andy, to go back to the mitigation, how do you put a value on that?
Well, I guess we could go right to worst case scenario, and that is,
Or we could go to best.
we could go to best case scenario. Best case scenario is it's under 1/10 and we waive mitigation.
Okay.
let's say it's a quarter acre and the permit requires some kind of mitigation, right? That kind of mitigation usually is satisfied by going and purchasing a mitigation bank credit. There are several wetland mitigation banks in the county. That's where someone goes in and restores wetland in an area that was probably wetland prior to farming or whatever, brings wetland back onto the landscape and then sells those acres in the form of credits. So there's one, give me a couple, one in St. Clair County.
Chartier Road?
Chartier Road, yeah, we're in, right. Chartier, there's one on Bell River. So there's a couple around. Those credits are $125
125 to 150 an acre.
an acre.
That's where I was.
Yeah, $125 to $150 an acre.
So I think
We don't set the price, the banker sets the price.
Yeah.
well, yeah, and so this parcel is a forested parcel, it's forested wetlands, and it was just under an acre of wetland. All 4 parcels that we're looking at are all wetland lots. So worst case scenario, you impact the entire, 0.95 acres of wetlands, and for forested, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every 1 acre of impact, you have to mitigate for 2 acres, right? Did I say that right? So it could be close to, $300,000.
Minorly off subject, I just figured out who you were. We did have .19 acres that was not wetlands when we originally were going to try to put a septic field, if I'm correct, on the William Street side.
We only looked at the site that was applied for in the permit.
Septic field originally, where the yards had all been filled in from the people on William Street. We have the area between the woods and their back lots that basically look like their back lots. I think it was, because that was you, I think, that came up with .19 acres when we applied to the health department. This is before this plant was even
Oh,
involved.
he's talking about a different area that's lawn
Yeah, it's long.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah, no, it's the one end of those lots.
Oh, that probably isn't
The people
wetland.
just basically encroached on the lots.
Yeah.
And made their lots bigger.
That happens over there, Bruce? What are you talking about?
0.19 acres. At this point, the health department is willing to issue us a septic field permit again, because they canceled the idea of that through some program with the Eagle, and now Eagle is willing to, and
Well, so we
the
took
EPA was other people involved, at least.
the Army Corps, so this is.
No, but EPA was giving us a variance about something from the water level never having reached a certain height, and that's why they canceled the permit once this went on for a couple of years with,
Oh, that's the health department.
yes, with the health department.
Oh.
The health department, now the health department's wanting us to do it again because of a change in regulation. That's why this is a big time, Bob's working on the question, 3 years down the road is costing us $300,000. Named Bob.
Yeah.
So
We're already
that's why this is
spending
important to
already.
us.
Yep. Well, I mean, as the way site selection goes, the site project couldn't have selected a worse site. It's all wetland, on an island.
The 0.19 acres, I keep bringing it
So,
up.
well, and that's fine. Move whatever portion of the project you can onto that .19.
I'm not sure.
Well,
If that's available, we're gonna talk about that.
Is that,
That's just something I think it was yourself that we talked on the phone only, but you had been out to that site, and it's an area that's up near the houses on William Street. It runs
Before the woods.
100 feet by 40 feet wide or something. It's backyards of those people's houses.
okay, and is that on those 4 lots?
Yes.
Okay. If it's on the lots, I mean, I was just going off of the wetland delineation that Rhiannon did.
Oh, maybe that's where it came
So,
from.
yeah,
We had
so-
2 wetland delineations before the township was involved. One with
Yeah.
Huddle, Roth, and Clark, and one with the lady who John used.
Guerrero.
Brianna, yep.
Yeah, so, that was where, I mean,
Oh,
that
that's
is
where
like
the
the
numbers
survey, right, so I'm not.
If you've got available upland to put any portion of this project on, we would encourage you to explore that.
I think there was in the back.
Yes,
Where the
but-
backyards abut
and
the
again,
properties. And I think we talked about that, right? I mean, we talked about that during the site review of the application, and there was a lot of
Yes,
back
and
and forth.
Bob and I, at least, we may be in business, but we'd like to get along with their neighbors. We'd be basically putting the plant in a spot that they've been cutting their lawn for how many years? It's not very fair to them. A septic field doesn't make any difference because it's lawn again. They haven't built any structures or anything out.
I know. Unfortunately, people like lawns more than wetlands.
Well, they like it a lot better than a greenhouse with a sewer plant in it.
Understood. Understood. We're ready to restart the wetland process anytime, but you guys got to get further down the road on the Part 41 process. So the worst-case scenario for our program would be like, we issue a wetland fill permit, the wetlands get filled, get mitigated for, the plant never gets built, and then houses get built there. The program would probably never issue a permit for fill for houses on that site. The only reason that we're considering fill at that site is because the public benefit of the plant. So,
Right, like to develop on all wetland lots like this
Yeah.
is kind of unheard of unless it's a very high.
yeah, public benefit,
Right.
public benefit, detriment, part of the weighing system.
Yep.
Well, I'm just saying, if I can just say, if you guys would do something to make sure what the people want in this area. Just, I don't know when it became a more grandiose plan, but they were not asked, no one, we had a meeting in the winter when 90% of the people aren't there, when we had the original one in the township for the Lions Hall on the island. And say the pushback that came on Maple Street especially was hard.
Is there not right of ways on all these streets?
Then you'd have to have, John
Is there
was
right of
telling me
way?
that they wouldn't give us right away.
So, no, it's not a give, it's, the city always has a right of way easement also far off the road. In every city that I know.
Any easements over there would be county easements.
County easement.
Yeah, township doesn't have any.
So just as a comment to some of the things that Bruce was saying about the people, we did contact the people on Maple Street because we were trying to obtain easements and widen that road to put all the utilities that we were going to put in it. We have sewer coming in, discharge going out. We're going to extend the water, or I think the water main was down there. Fix the storm drainage, do some other things in the process. So we approached them, and some of the property owners were not interested. So we came up with a plan to go around them and just deal with those who were willing to grant easements. So, yes, he's right. There are people that are not interested in the project. When we tried to go kind of door to door, just doing survey work on individual sites of how we would connect the pump stations and into their septic tanks and that kind of thing. We had people that resisted and that were not interested in the project, and some, in fact, were. But, you know, I guess I don't have a number specifically on that. One comment that I want to make is, Bruce is right. If you do a smaller package treatment plant, you can serve, you know, a smaller area. There's ways and there's technologies to do it that are probably much more economical than algae will. So, but this original project from way back started with this 80-some people. We did have a meeting at the Lions Hall where there was quite a few people there at the time. I don't remember the number, but it was pretty packed, where we talked about the plant and tried to come up with a service district. And the algae wheel technology pushed all the right buttons for grant money because it was green, was new, it had potentially for credits, carbon credits, it had all of these things that people like to hear about the technology. And that could be part of the reason they were willing to give the grant money, besides the fact of trying to clean up what would be a problem during high water, right, with failing septic fields. So whether this grant money that is being talked about right now would still consider this using a different technology, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, that there probably are cheaper ways to build this plant. And, but maybe that has to be weighed. Would they still give the grant money if it didn't have the green technology? Am I wrong, Joe? There are other methods, right?
Yes. I mean, distributed wastewater sewer has been around for much longer than the algae wheel technology's been around. Algae wheel has certain benefits in certain situations, like all the things John mentioned. Also, with the way that that plant operates, it uses less electricity. And I won't get into why that is, but we can do a whole class on it after if you guys are interested. But as the good folks in the back of the room are well aware, I mean, we can treat wastewater with lagoons, we can treat them with fixed film MBBRs, all different kinds of stuff. So if it's sensible to explore that avenue, it might be worth your time.
I'm just gonna, you guys keep in your mind, not trying, because I obviously want this thing to go forward one way or another. But the original, when we were getting funding in that, already kept coming up with, Gary Peters is gonna give us this money, Gary Peters is gonna give us this money before Artie left. It was allocated, he actually dropped it in something called committee and didn't present it to keep going forward after he said he was gonna give the money. And Senator McLean had $2 million she was gonna give us. And in all truthfulness, I think the reason she backed out on, how to say this without being liable, she just didn't get along with Paul, yes. I don't know if that's the case, but she did back out of hers, because she said up to the day she wasn't gonna back it, but she was telling me she was gonna give it to us. But then just all of a sudden, she said no.
We have a representative from Senator Hertel's office, correct?
Yes, hi.
Go ahead.
New York, the Senator Hertel's office. I just wanted to just relay, I've been with his office for just a little over a year, so I don't go as far back as all of you on this project. But with speaking to the Senator, he did just want me to relay that the intent of the state grant was for the downtown, for the smaller project, with the intention that as funding becomes available, that it would expand because it was modular. So the $2 million from the state for an algae wheel was, the intent originally was for the downtown area, but knowing that they could tap into it and expand to cover the other residents. So I just want to, so if we're talking, I don't personally know, I'd have to check with MEPC and the boilerplate language to see, if you change from an algae wheel to something which might make, more sense, affordability, something smaller. I just don't know if that works with with the boilerplate language. So we would have to check, and if we have to make a change, it would probably take a while and be a big legislative change.
That'd be interesting to know how the grant was issued, if there is certain specific requirements.
I probably could find it before we leave here, the boilerplate language, and I believe when we looked into this, even recently, it would need a legislative change. I think when Cassidy was still here, we were looking at a few things, and it would have needed a legislative, so it would have to go up to vote, and wouldn't happen anytime soon.
And just, Joe, I think a question to you that would be, I'm just gonna say, you could put these in a line, right? Do a small one, and if you expand it, just put another one in line to it.
Right, but if you're talking about something that's going to start with 8 and go to 80, you have to be cognizant of what 80 looks like in the beginning, right? But again, for a lot of wastewater projects, all across the state at all different levels of inflow, it's typical that you would have, you would leave room for something later if you were to go ahead and have to expand it, right? That way, if you have to come back and add basins or blowers or whatever, you have a line flange on a T, and it doesn't cost $10 million to do something, right? So I think that was the original intention, was having that expandability kind of built into the project. And again, that's also to deal with some of the stuff we were talking about earlier about changes in inflow.
So would the footprint of the plan itself stay the same and just expand? Or would you, like Bruce said, you'd have to add additional?
The site is going to have to allow for a full build-out over time, right? I mean, right. But site work is beyond me. That's not my wheelhouse.
So the original wetland permit application included actually impacting all of the wetlands that was on that site, which was going to be, I think, 0.8 of an acre, or something like that. And that was to allow for future expansion, so that you didn't go back and say, because originally you put up this big of a plant, but when you add on, it's got to be bigger, we wouldn't have had to go back through the wetland process again. We would have had it all covered under the initial permit. So that was the original intent.
Okay, so if we were to add on to expand, would we add on inside the original structure, or would we add on to the structure?
Add on to the structure typically.
Okay.
You know, I have a question. When I donated the property to the township, already, we had the town hall meeting in late '23, where phase one was projected to leave the town. Artie told me, as it came out of that meeting, Artie told me when I was donating the property, that if I donated when I did, the thing would be up and operating. He had all the funding in place, everything was in place to start digging holes. It would be done by November of '24. That's what I was told. Since then, you know, here we are, we're starting over right now. You know, would it be beneficial? Because it's costing us $84,000 a year as this is going along. I bought those lots to put a septic field on to handle the bar's use. When we got involved to let's help the town, everything's gone sideways. We're being penalized to the cost of $84,000 a year while we're trying to sort this out. And everybody's doing their best. I mean, everybody's trying, but we're the one paying for it. Would it be worthwhile at this point to give me my property back so I can put in a field to satisfy our needs, and you guys search for another location?
I do have the boilerplate language, and it does say for a sanitary collection water infrastructure project. And the senator just said that, texting him, he's in Lansing, sorry, on the Senate floor, that, you know, he's mentioned that it didn't have to be an algae wheel, but the problem is there was an algae wheel deposit, so that you can't get back. Is that correct?
Yes. Is that you represent where this algae wheel? Would we get that deposit back towards something else?
The township made a deposit to Algae Wheel, the manufacturer, not my organization,
Okay.
so that's a question for them.
They already said they're not giving the money back on multiple occasions.
I don't know who you talked to, and
Well, they just got too much time. They've sent people here to these meetings trying to get it done, whether physically here, where these questions could have been asked of them, and nobody ever asked them anything.
Do you know what the amount was, Bruce?
Do you have the amount in front of you?
Somewhere 30,000.
389.
89. And plus, I think there's 120 to you.
Yeah.
That's separate though.
that was for a couple pumps and the UV system. Now, the UV system was on the permit as the disinfection process. This was when Artie was still around. The intention was to get equipment going to save from inflationary costs over the course of.
I think my question would be, is that money still going to be able to use towards anything?
If we do a project here and we're working with you guys on the project, we will make you whole on that money. We can deliver you product. I mean, so a lot of that stuff you're going to need anyway. And we work with these guys to select things that were going to be required based on the draft permit and some of that other stuff.
The only thing you're really risking is the algae wheel money. I might also add, if anybody cares, just because I call random companies, they said, some people from the township here with oil sewer licenses have told me that it would have been a lot easier to go with a different type of plant than algae.
Correct, but the other half of that is the funding for that. You know, this funding's available where,
Yeah, and it's just on this thought that they didn't make the point very clear that a proven technology would have been a much easier thing to do.
right,
I gotta say, the people at Algae Wheel, to say they've bent over backwards for us is an understatement. They're trying to make this work any way they can, but the technology is just not proven. Because like if they want to put another plant in Indiana, it's a proven thing. They want one here so they can start building plants here.
How much is the smaller non-algae wheel setup? Any
I don't know, it's just in the discussions, it's always been, there's significantly cheaper technology to do it.
When I spoke,
Well-known technology to Eagle, right?
when I spoke to Algae Wheel,
Yes.
they said they've downsized this plant 3 times, trying to reach. He said it is not, the way it was gone about to be done is, you can't say, I have this, design the building to that, the plant to that. And they got to down to their 3rd changeover in it, and they more or less said they were done with it. That's when they said that this plant has to come back to the original plans, and it's the fastest way to move forward with this plan is to go back to the original 80-some homes to make that. And everybody I talk to is where they take this project to. They're right back to the 80-some homes. It's the best, most fit in the future. And when people are looking at it, you say these people don't want to hook into it. Unfortunately, they sell, things happen to them, the next guy will hook into it, and they move on. That's where the bigger plant was more feasible at the end of the day.
But they were told, at the same meeting, already said in November, they were told they would not be required to hook into it.
Right.
Yeah, but we can't get a county easement, talk to the county, get an easement.
But not just the easement zone, it's about the usage too.
Well, no, you can design a system that, like you said, you can design a system that doesn't have 85 homes on it now, but can be used with 85 homes later on. If you put the pipe in the right of way, there's debt services. I'm dealing with it on my house in Clinton Township. I have to pay a debt service to tie into the sewer. So the sewer was put in and tap was allocated for my property. Nobody ever tied into it because the old house had septic. Now I'm tying into it, the money that was already spent by the township, now I have to pay back in the debt service to connect to the sewer. So if you can get the county to allow you to put the pipe in their easement and put it in the right of way at the property line, like every other city, there's your problem solved. You don't have to force anybody. The weighted cost is just now the debt service pays for the cost later on.
Everything was in the road right of way,
It was.
other than a couple of easements that people did grant,
Yeah.
which then.
We
is
did
sufficient.
grant a couple of them too.
I think you did, yes.
I think a big
I'm trying to
consider.
get this project, like, this is what I do for a living. So.
I think a big consideration on operation cost after this thing's up and running is if it's $75,000 or $100,000 a year, whatever it is, to split that between 80 homes as opposed to 8 is a big,
The businesses are on there, so the businesses take the.
okay. What I'm saying is,
Put in a system for 8 houses right now, or 8 businesses now, on a small system, my cost is still gonna be $20,000 a year. I manage to operate 2 traditional sewer plants and mobile home parks that we own, and water treatment, and I spend about $95,000 a year in that.
And John, just
Go-
that with the smaller plant, check with whoever you want, you probably know more about than me, but the one engineer I talked to said the reason the price is that high is because the amount of outflow. You can go to Eagle and ask them if you go with the small plant. He said he just got done mitigating rather than daily checks 3 times a week, which is the traveling to the islands. You cut that, our cheapest price so far, 120. If we went with the smaller plant, it'd drop it to 65 right there.
65,000 a year? 65,000.
It's per day they check it, because it's
So-
something they have to check every day.
Well-
And it's a travel to go there and go to a plant. And if we went with a smaller plant, when you're under a certain flow, they'll usually grant thing for 3 times a week.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Take care.
All right, so we're going back to the original. Yeah, I'll give you a call. I don't have a card on me.
Yeah.
So we're going back to this, and I'm kind of like in between, like the thing, I get a little bit of information here, I don't get invited to every meeting kind of thing. So we're going back in 85. PCE is contracted through the township, right?
They're our township engineer.
You guys hired them to be the engineer?
No, they're our township engineer on everything.
I know, but on this project, there's,
They were originally with it. They have stopped engineering on this stuff that he has. As far as I know, we're not contract, or however, you know, so that's why nothing has been said, done, because,
I just want to see the most up-to-date plan, so like we can kind of help, because this is a detriment to us too, because we own property. So I'm just trying to get this ball time to talk. So I'm just trying to, maybe sit down with PCE and you guys and kind of like, let's get a strategy like how this is going with the right of way and look into those options where we can do those routes instead of forcing 85 people.
Right.
Regardless of if we do an 8-unit plant just for the downtown district, we're spending 20,000. I'm good with 10,000. That saves me money. If that's, I'm being honest here.
Well,
So if you got.
and I understand you guys have an expense that, it's going to be cost savings to you, but what about the other 7 businesses?
Well, we've come to the.
Yeah, I mean, they're spending
When I
$80,000
talked
a
to
year.
you, I'm representing, until recently, Brandon's came in, I represent the people in town. They've all asked me to be the one to do this.
But you got to remember too, at the end of the day, I get you're willing to step up and pay for that. We're not guaranteed an hour from now, so who's going to be liable to pay for 80 grand a year if unfortunately something happens that you no longer own the business that you own?
Well, I would assume that if the township, like, you guys still have the option to leave the nonprofit, take this over, but you guys would have to set something up with the agreement that we have, that the use by gallon would pay for the plant. If it's down, if San Souci Bar closed, everything closed, the plant closes, if you only go with the 8 businesses. But if not, it'll be like, you turn, who's got city water and sewer here? You don't pay your bill, they turn you off.
Here,
That's simple.
here's another thing. The way Macomb County, I'm in Macomb County, I'm building a house in Macomb County. The house I have no outlet for stormwater. I have to put a 5 by 15 foot deep with 3 phase pumps in, a lift station, and a pond for my residential house. Macomb County, and I mean, Eagle knows about this, you have stormwater management agreements with property owners, businesses, for anything for retention ponds. I don't know how you guys do stuff over here. But I had to sign a stormwater management agreement that stays with the county and the township for the running life of my property. So say I sell the property next year. Whoever takes over that property has to have that commitment, and there's no one up front that commitment is there. It's a running with the life of that property.
Okay, but how many of those businesses in San Souci would commit to $2,500 a quarter for their sewer bill if they knew that was coming?
Probably only 2.
That's what I'm saying. How many could actually even afford it?
Right.
I know you guys, it's a huge cost savings, but
Yeah, but what we presented it as, that we'd all throw in, and the number has bounced around, but everybody pay a monthly fee, let's say, all of us. And then it'd be on water usage beyond that. Right now would be the biggest water usage, we'd pay the lion's share of it.
So what happens if one of the businesses go out of business? Who pays?
Then it goes back to the water usage, just like what happens if 90% of the people in Clay Township move out and like 10%? You still gotta.
The township stuck paying. Because it's a utility. Once this is built, it's a utility that's responsible for the township. Township's liable for it. We have to run it whether you're there, 8 businesses or not, once it's,
Then I would say the thing that if you're that afraid of that, then turn it over to the nonprofit.
can you turn that grant over to a nonprofit, Amanda? Because when I did MEDC reporting yesterday, that was not an option.
Yeah, we did ask about that, I don't have clarification on the, I think, or actually, they did.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't get anything in writing, I should say.
Yeah,
but-
we don't have it.
She was not for, she was not for even when.
She said that it's not even possible.
It should have never left this office. This grant should have never left this office. So,
Yeah, there was a phone call I had before, but if you guys had clarification yesterday, then,
Yeah, well, that was not the clarification when,
but they've also switched, there's different folks.
different personnel there now.
Yep.
But when Kevin had checked into it, that was not the case. It's a legislative choice of who carries the burden for running this.
And really, we need to sit
So-
down and find out what plant we're building, what the cost is gonna be, and find, I can talk to the people that we use, because I
Would-
have to test 5 days a week, and I'm multiple plants, so.
would Eagle even issue permits through a nonprofit organization?
I don't know. The discharge permit?
I mean, all the required permits?
Don't know.
I mean, has that been done in the past?
I mean, for wetland.
We would, from the wetland program, we would, sure.
You would have to have a contractor to pull the permits and do the
I just really want to make this clear. This does not have to be a government entity. I've talked to a lot of, the name that comes up a lot in the talk, and I'm not even sure what position is with you, but Marissa Ferraro, she's some department head. But keep in mind, small truck stops, trailer park, RV parks, all have these. They're private entities that have these.
Correct. They pay for it themselves, though. That's the problem. We're using state monies here that,
Well, yeah, and as far as if you go small, that's the one thing I really want to impress here, is the costs are not near as high as if you go big.
that's why we're here today, to get this
Well, I
figured
know,
out.
I'm
And
just keep that in mind, that, I think, I don't know if any of you guys know, I'm gonna murder the name, but Nick Kara used to run the Algae sewer plant. He's one I've been talking to lately, and he was telling me about, well, with the discharge permit that was turned in by PCE, basically, you're backed into a corner of the same thing as Algae water plant, where if you downsize the flows, you can ask for variances or whatever they give you for smaller plants. Because there's no way in hell a 12 slot ORV park is paying $180,000 a year for their sewer.
There's a difference there between daily monitoring and not daily monitoring. So like big wastewater treatment plants are required to do a daily monitoring report. And I think what Bruce is talking about is that for certain discharges under a certain amount of gallons, that doesn't need to be done daily, but less frequently, less cost, less effort.
I don't want to speak for him.
I don't know what that limit is.
He said 3 times a week. Sounds like it's not common, or it's fairly common on what he runs, because he takes over management of these plants and he runs them. But if you can get down to the thing that when Anthony was involved, the guy, I almost hate to mention his name at this point, but to do this thing that checks it automatically, dumps into a vial, but that doesn't cure the one, I don't know what it is, there's something that needs to be checked daily.
Well, that's the DMR, daily monitoring report.
Right, but not all the chemicals need to be checked. There's some sort of biological one that needs to be checked but they can give you a pass on that if it's small. But if you're dumping 12,000 gallons a day in it, they're not going to give you a pass on it.
So what was the flow on this, on our Part 41 discharge permit based on, John? Do you remember?
I want to say the plant was originally designed to up to 25,000 gallons a day.
25,000 a day?
Up to that amount, right. And that permit was not something that we created, it was something that Eagle created, right, based on the technology that was being used. So I think in confirming what Bruce is saying too is, because it was new technology, my understanding was that was one of the reasons they also had the daily testing requirements. And that possibly after a year's period of time of validating that it's meeting the limits, that maybe that could have gotten dropped down to 3 days, which is common for small plants. So.
I think what you should, we are going back to the beginning. We're starting all over again. I think, it's going to take a long time to get this fixed, to build it, just to get it done. All the permitting has to be done again. I would suggest, because of our situation, if you return the lots, we would put in our septic field. That solves our problem. We support the algae plant 100%, and we would, if you found an alternative site, then you'd have the luxury of all the time you need to build it. It wouldn't be a rush. But for us to be penalized at $7,000 a month because we need more time to do this, I don't think it's fair. I get no response, so.
November of 24 to be done, not, this isn't even possible in November of 26. I know, everybody's going to stay up there, it's not this board.
Yeah, but Bruce, Anthony was the guy that stood there and told us that.
I didn't meet Anthony much later than this, but he was working for John.
I put as much faith in that as you did, so.
I was told by Artie Bryson. I was told by the supervisor of Clay Township when I donated the property.
Well, I can tell you with infrastructure projects, if you put a deadline on it, you're in big trouble.
Right. Well, that's part of my decision.
Especially this technology,
So So I guess, well, how do we move forward? You know, I want to help, I want to be part of the solution, but I can't absorb a losing business
I get that part.
because we want to do the right thing.
So is it your position in San Souci Bar that you would prefer to go to a septic field?
Yeah.
Or is it your position that you would prefer to pursue having that grant money and everything over to the San Souci downtown?
No, I'd
District.
rather us put in a septic field, and then when you guys, when the plant is built and up and running, we would probably tap into it. But for right now,
So,
I can have a field in there for, I can have a field in for about 80,000.
so with a septic field, there's no issue of running the piping across the road, or how does that work?
I don't know.
The county will give us one crossing. That's how Artie got involved in the first place. When we were trying to do this, I had to use easements. The private companies can't use easements. It takes a government entity. But I can cross the road once, and I have acquired the easements for all the property to get it to the septic field we need.
So we can put it in. You know,
We had that since before there was ever talking about a sewer plant. The only reason we didn't put the septic field in is Artie said we'd never plant by October or November.
And nothing changed in there since then? Just, I'm looking out for you on this, I want to make sure.
What changed is once the plant started to come in, they came up, and I think it was on Eagle, that if the high water mark was ever so high on a piece of property, that they wouldn't issue the permit. Then they canceled the permit, but not even at my request. EPA, Eagle, and the health department got together and said they would issue the permit.
yeah, we can put in a field.
So you're legal in the county, I could tear the road up and all that, that's,
No, the directional bore from our last tank.
well, anyways, right.
Yeah, a directional bore to the lots, and it's one shot, and it doesn't have to come out of the ground until it gets to the septic.
So you're gonna do that on a private basis?
Yes.
Did you get your permit yet?
We can't because we gave the lots to you, and we don't own the lots to put it on.
This is a nightmare.
So that's the predicament, you know, and
We're trying to do the right thing with Bob, because he's more a businessman than I am. We keep getting wrecked for trying to do the right thing. That's
yeah.
just-
And you
it
guys
pisses
are
off.
trying to do the right thing, that's why let's put all the cards on the table and figure out.
Right, because I own a business, I can tell you right now, if I had to pay $80,000 a year to get rid of my sewage, it'd be an abandoned building, because I'd never be able to pay it.
Well, that's,
So,
Our 70s and the heat barrel,
well, that's
in the
where
same
we are with
ballpark.
the bar makes zero money. It costs every nickel of profit to maintain the building and pay the sewer.
now, completely understand that, I know how big the parking is there, I know what it takes
The
to,
margins are small, and it's a battle to keep it going.
right.
You know, you got people, you have everything, so I'd like to get this situation more tenable. You know, if we had the field in, we wouldn't have the monthly cost, and we cooperate in any way we could.
What kind of a commitment do we have with the people that are assuming they're going to get a sewer line?
You have easements with us that we want to use.
Well, John can tell you, how many people signed off on that? I mean, just a shot.
There were only 2 or 3, I think, that we needed, that we got.
No, that, the
Easements?
easement, yeah.
Are you talking
Okay,
about-
no, I think the general question, I think that question is directed, how many people were
Yeah,
willing to commit
right.
to connect to it? I think you're gonna get, in the district you're talking, with the exception of Poplar Street, because I never walked down and knocked on the door, till at 12 and want to connect.
Well, and that's a different problem.
No, I know, but I'm just
Yeah, I know.
saying,
Right.
but if you're thinking who you're gonna spread the cost over, with the exception of Poplar Street, because I never went that far, you'll have 12 that are willing to connect. But I gotta say this, if you use the $130,000 figure and take it by 12, dream on, because every 3 years they could have a brand new septic system put in for the same maintenance price.
What size tank would you use? What size tank?
For ours?
Yeah.
We have 6,000 gallons of tanks already, and one of the reasons, this is something the gentleman who runs the plant now at Algae tells us they don't mind us dumping there because we dump clear water basically, because it's already one 1,500 gallon tank, it stages to another 1,500 gallon tank, stages to another 1,500 gallon tank, and then we put it doesn't need to be a grinder pump because we only have clear water in the last tank, but it would be a grinder pump, would pump it out in the last 1,500 gallons. And the health department says the thing is something each time it cycles, it's 100 gallons at a time it puts to the field.
I guess if there's anybody else for discussion, we move on to public comments on there. And then the board member comments. John, you got anything?
Well, I feel for these guys, and I understand where they need to get somewhere quickly, economically. There's a lot of variables here that we need to consider, and I think there's still a few questions that need to be answered. My concern, which has always been my concern, is whatever we put in there, if we put anything in there, when it's up and running, we have to be able to pay for that with customer fees. That's my biggest concern, and I still don't have answers to that, to be honest with you.
Right.
Can I just ask, where's the lots that you have?
They're on Maple Street. At the end of Maple Street, there's 4 lots that are
Okay,
wooded.
all right. And
Is that before the bar?
Yes, yes.
Are you allowed to put the septic piece, I know you said this before, you're allowed to put a septic field in there?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
confirmed, you're allowed to put a septic field in there?
Right. The
And
field
that
would go in, and then it'd just be a grassy lot.
And then that would just handle the
Just
bar?
the bar.
Not any other businesses, just,
No. And
can it
that-
handle more, or just?
No, we're limited by the land that's dry.
Right.
And that's not wetlands, and
Okay.
that's why we tried to go bigger to
Right.
include the town, and that's when a plant came into play.
And then my other thing is, I would just suggest a meeting, if, I don't know what plan you're gonna go with or whatever, I would say just do the septic field. The other thing, if you're gonna go forward with this, I would plan a meeting at the island to see who it would be interested in this and who wouldn't, and an explanation to people how it works, because everybody goes, oh, it's gonna smell like shit here. So they need an explanation that I think it's great technology, I would love to see it, but at the same time, you guys need to have a septic field for right now, for now. You can have this over and done and no more discussion, you know what I mean? If you wanna do it,
And just to throw this out, we even did present to Brandon's father-in-law, if we spent the money and the Eagle was to allow us to fill and put the septic fields, we can't let a second, even if we had the room, we can't let a second entity connect to it because it goes under Part 41 again. You can't, it becomes a community septic field, not a single business.
I was gonna ask that thing.
Yeah, we tried that before we ever asked about the plans, because we thought give everybody a lot, and everybody put their own septic field in a lot, but if you join them, then they call it, goes under Part 41 as a public, I don't know what, Part 41 anyway, which is a big deal.
What about the land that's right at the corner of South Channel and Maple? Oh, you're the one that owns that.
We can, if they're gonna allow them to put a septic field in, I have no doubt that we can put a septic field in there.
Oh, you'll be able to put a septic
I put a
field.
septic field in for our buildings and our development.
Okay, so you own that lot
Yeah,
in
and
front
we
of
own
Bob
the-
and Gary's house?
Yeah, we own the land.
Oh, you own the land? Oh, okay.
But we can't do the tenant at the landing because we have no sewer capacity.
But if you had a septic system on the land across the street from
Should
the
ask her.
land, then you could open up the land, correct?
Well, I don't want to put a septic field on that whole piece because I intend to build it one day.
There's a lot of things to think about, for sure.
Oh, you
I don't want to waste that land for a septic field.
Okay.
No, we ain't making no decision.
We want to put up another
We don't even know if we're gonna use what we have to pay back. We don't know what it's gonna cost the township.
Well, the million we got up front,
So, Roy, the only other thing I would say is,
not get the second.
if we were
That's
to
a
move forward on
reimbursement.
this, I think it would be important to do some type of a survey to see what the support is in this proposed district.
What we have now.
I also would want some input from St. Clair County Health Department, because I could tell you on the mainland, wherever there's sanitary sewer, it is required hookup. You don't have the option, you must hook up. So I don't know how this would, how they would take a look at this situation, if that would apply the same as it does for sanitary sewer on the mainland, but.
Like I said, I grew up on a septic. I do not know why nobody would want to do that. I'd put a brand new septic in and I would hook into municipal sewer in a heartbeat.
I understand. I'm just saying it's something, if we were to move forward, we need to definitely consider.
Right.
State law does require to hook up.
State law does require, there's your answer.
18 months, if it's available,
And how
So
many
all
months?
those 85 people would have to hook up
within 18 months.
within
Within
18
18 months.
So then
Right.
we'd be forcing all their hands, basically, if we build the plant. Well, you know,
If
'cause
we
it's state,
built a plant that size.
that size.
For 85.
They are
I
not
do
gonna
too.
wanna hook up.
I do too.
That's what I'm saying, like, I don't wanna force people
Some
to,
people do, but, I mean, I love my septic field, I would never hook up, personally, me, myself. I love the technology, and I think it's great, but people on the island love their septic fields. It works.
And myself, I don't know why, and you said that, Roy, I've had, where I live now, raised a family there, 34 years, I had my tank pumped once, and the gentleman came out and says, why are you getting it pumped? It's like, it's just.
You got dishwasher, you got garbage disposal, you got all them
I
good
also
things.
have one of the new high. when
He also had 2 daughters, so I do. Shower, shower, shower.
I am.
Well, yeah, can I just remind, Senator Hertel wants to work with you guys on whatever you guys want to do and, whatever the township decides, but we do have that money sitting there and he wants to, I know in the past, other people are like, hey, can we get money for this project or this project? And he's like, well, we got you 2 million, we want to see this, something happen with it. That's
So if something happens that does not move forward with this, what happens to the money that's already been spent?
that's a good question. The money's been spent.
And you're talking there was what, 600,000 spent out here that,
Then essentially, unfortunately, wasting.
I think the senator said to me, we don't really want to.
We don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
Because that's taxpayer dollars that we've all paid into the entire state to,
well, and I think that
help
would be,
the community.
moving forward, requesting grant money again in the future,
Yeah,
would
we're
probably
already-
be greatly impacted.
we've already, we got a lot of money out asking on this project.
Like I
That's,
said, the boilerplate did not say it had to be the Algae wheel, but obviously you guys already have money in that, but there is,
So we could look at other options.
Could I just ask you? how
Like
much
other
do you
types of
think that
plans.
If this wish list grant money, how much do you think is still
Not
falling
like the other
short?
senators. They're not gonna
Just
give
a
us
guess.
money.
Bill worked on
It's
that.
because of this technology.
So one thing I did want to say too, just so everybody's aware, and I think Amanda, you can verify this, we can use that money that Senator Hertel got us appropriated for the Algae wheel as match money on other grants, correct?
I think that's what we figured out at our last
And
meeting.
that-
I need
that-
to
Okay.
confirmation.
I thought that's what
I
MEDC
think,
told
yeah,
us.
so if you're applying for a congressional directed spending request through, McLean's office, Producer's office, the federal, I think you could say we already have that money from the state to.
So like the 80-20 part, so like that other million could go towards the 20%
Right.
of the 80% from the
Correct.
federal
Well,
government.
the first million was given to us to get this project started. The second million is a reimbursement.
so we have to spend $1 million.
We have to spend
To
$1
get
million to
back.
get it
But
back.
what I'm saying is that it can go, it can be used towards that 20% that we
Correct.
would have to cover.
Yes.
Roy, if I may, I'm just gonna, because I think it's important for the question I asked, if you thought about it, what do you think we're gonna fall short even if we get all the grant money?
For the 85,000?
Or
Or I mean, for the
85,000?
85,
Hookups.
hookups, I think we're gonna be right up against it. We're probably at 4.5 plus, I'm including this 1 point whatever, 5 left, whatever, 1.4 left on that one. I'm thinking we're gonna be right up to it right there. So 6.7, 8 total for the whole plan.
And there was, and that's not including the additional money that, once it was that far, that we could get, you know what I'm saying? There's other money out there, but they won't even commit to it till this is, is that correct? That's, yes.
So the other issue is Bob, if those lots come back to you, we need a new site to build the plant.
Right.
Roy, can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
You mentioned carbon credits earlier. I've been selling carbon credits since, about 2000 for our hunt club in the UP. We've got about 4,000 acres of mixed hardwood up there and such, and I generate quite a bit that I'm selling. I talked to our company that we sell to, it's a new, they were based out of San Francisco, and we looked at the volumes that Algae Wheel was kind of quoting, and better do a lot of homework if you think you're going to offset any of your costs by selling that, because nobody's going to buy it at that kind of volume. I mean, you're looking at people like Ford Motor Company, BP Petroleum that buy carbon credits. We're selling our stuff to consumers' power, and the only reason they're buying from us is because we had a good story. We got a nice, we're up in the Quaman River watershed. There's a lot of good stuff going on for our hunt club up there. They like the story, so that's the only reason we were able to sell it. So be cautious and do homework if you think you're.
That's why nothing, none of them had been figured into there. That was like just a little extra, whatever, right? And that's what I was told, sometimes it could be worth, depending on who's in office and the value of them go up and down and all that, so.
I was talking to someone, and they gave me a quote on what the carbon credit was be, and I'd say, it was, you wouldn't be able to sharpen a pencil with it, so it's ridiculous.
Sarah, you got anything? Or John, were you done?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
I'm with Bev. I feel like we were handed a mess to figure out, and we have to figure out what's best for everybody.
Quickly. They've been waiting a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the cost estimated for the tie-ins for the residents? With the 85 per?
If all 85 tied in, it would be.
Well, how much would it cost to tie, for them to tie it in?
How much would it cost for a resident to pay
Yeah.
out of pocket to tie in?
Yeah.
The project is covering the cost all the way from the exterior of their sanitary gravity system. The project's paying entirely for it to be connected to either the pod or the pressure system, the vacuum or pressure system. The project was paying for everything, including the little mini pump stations, if that's the way we were gonna go, the control panel, and hooking everything up. Once that system was up and running, the homeowner was then gonna be responsible for upkeep and maintenance of their own system. So there was no tap-in fee, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
There's
yeah.
no tap-in fee required at that time.
Okay.
And that is what they were told at the beginning meeting.
However, operating costs, that's, it's kind of like not 100% there, right? So the operating costs would still have to be borne by the users. The township is not going to absorb that cost in a whole. So sure, there's no tap-in fee, but there will be a user fee.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a monthly user fee.
I'm done.
Tanya? Anything?
No, I'm at a loss right now. I don't want to force people to do something they don't want to do, but we're in this predicament now, and I have, I want to get more answers before. Like, I still feel like we don't know a lot.
I mean, do we want to pursue some type of a survey to see who's interested and how much support there is on it?
I think we
I
should.
think that's the first thing we should do.
I think
Yeah.
that's prudent.
I think we need to see
That's
who
probably-
actually wants this.
Because like Christine said, they got 18 months and they have to hook into it. It's state law. So.
You think that'll apply, Christine, the same as it does?
Because it's a utility, right? Is that why?
So what are,
Maybe some research we can do to see, if we can get some more time, depending on what the state of the county has to say, but I don't know. State's usually pretty adamant about it.
so I'm not a math person, but if we're thinking, you said that it would cost like 80,000 a year to run this plant, is that what you're saying, Bill? So it's gonna cost if there's 85 taps, it would eventually cost them, each household, $1,000 a year to
Probably
run this?
ran off water usage, I would assume, right? Is that how sewage works? Off water usage
Well, there's,
fees?
Well, you generate a rate based on.
Yeah, there's both.
What
There's
you're
a
going to
base
need.
And then you have a
base fee.
To fit up, to cover
and then there's
operations.
there's like a percentage you pay if you use over X amount or.
Well, then you're gonna put money away too, to deal with maintenance on down the road,
Right, capital improvement.
capital improvements, right?
But then again, also
$1,000 a
that
home, that's a lot of money
You're gonna have-
for a lot of people.
you're gonna have funds captured through their downtown. That passed and went to the governor for signing. What are,
Is
you
it
know,
gonna
who
get
knows?
signed? That's what I hope it gets signed.
Well, I'm sure she would. I can't say that, but
I hope she does. But we can't, it's not done yet, so we can't rely on that, right? And what
They
is,
need,
right?
they need a board? The board has to agree to that?
Bruce, what's the status of the other 7 businesses that are there as far as?
Brand new.
I mean, are they in dire need of it too?
The market
Yeah.
is having to get pumped out because for some reason their septic field is failing.
Okay,
The grind got issued a thing by the health department, they use 120 gallons a day. Even for a coffee shop, that's not much. Brandon's business there, they're talking about, last time I talked to his father-in-law, putting in a brewery there, which would have a high use there, but it's closed. The grind's closed most of the time.
so the whole
Okay,
downtown
brewery,
needs
that
it.
would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Even when the landing was there, the reason the landing failed is because you could only be open for so many hours a day and just to
Right.
suit the business to stay
Okay.
open.
Does it make sense while you're serving the community to also look into just a smaller non-algae wheel option and what the cost would be for just the downtown community? To see if that's feasible at all? Just so you
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
A
that's
septic system.
a septic or,
Well, it's not a septic, it's still a smaller algae mix container system.
right,
At that point. That's what we've been trying to do.
right.
And now we're back, the last meeting I was at, and we were at, that was what we were talking about, now we're at 85 plus. It goes back and forth so much, I'm lost. But I was gonna general contract the project, because last I heard was they wanted one contractor to handle all of the stuff. And that's what we do, so.
And I really can't stress enough that if this board, I consider 3 boards that I've dealt with in 3 years almost. The communication, how it became this big grandiose plan was not done at open meetings, as far as it going, somebody gave me some paperwork here, I think it's what Brandon's holding here. 596 connections.
I don't know, John, I'm pretty sure this is the last plan that I got when we had the meeting with Senator Ertel at the restaurant, so, I mean, I can let you take it.
I never heard anything
That's
like
the
that.
only thing I have on here.
That meeting was a long, I mean, it was over a year ago. Just with some of the, community members we came in. And that was the first time that the senator had heard that it was
Covers both sides of the
$6 million
island.
instead of this $2 million project.
And at that point, it was either, I'm sorry to say this is a widespread, but it was either 467,000 per hookup or 647,000 per hookup. That's when Paul Cassidy had a meltdown and said, F this, that's insane, because you could buy everybody's house for that much money.
And that was just the senator meeting with local folks.
So, the businessmen, the people that are going to be involved with it, and John.
Conversation.
You know, closer place to your far that's gonna be up for sale, and I was looking at the property, is Mary and Bob's house, which is right behind your place. I was looking at to buy
Well,
it.
they talked to us about it, but I haven't.
Then, I think they were saying 300-some thousand, which would be a nice turnover
That's
for
the
them.
original.
Yeah, I know they,
85 homes, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if that plant was scaled to already include phase 2 and 3. I have to look back at that.
Can you send me whatever's current, like, for plans, because I'd like to see a copy of them, of like, actual plans, for whatever we're trying to build right now, like,
I think he's.
At the moment, they're not trying to build anything, they haven't decided what to do.
Right.
At the moment, they.
Yeah, but public money was spent with an engineering firm, and those plans are public, should be public knowledge, so.
And
Anything you
you've
wanna
got,
get, you can get to the
so that's what we're proposing.
We've asked for
Well,
that.
last time I heard, they didn't have a set of plans.
Information on
Well,
what
they've had,
any,
Last meeting I was at, nobody had a plan, and nobody knew that.
Nobody submitted a FOIA for that.
not that he didn't like.
Not to me, anyways.
Okay,
Not
he
to
did
me.
not, he did not.
Okay. I was like, not to me.
Yeah.
So who do we contact to get plans? If he doesn't have them, they don't have them.
Township clerk.
You have to FOIA them through.
What's that?
We request that they supply the township with the plans so the public can see what's being planned, this 85, that's the first time I've really heard this number 85 now.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've got to back up a little bit. We're all over the place. You know, let's take care of our immediate problems. You know, we're starting over. Where do we go if we go anywhere at all? But we have to resolve the bars issue. You know, give the property back, we'll put in our field, and we don't have a problem. Then we have all the luxury of all the time you need to decide if and when you're gonna go forward.
So what I wouldn't mind doing, and I get, you've been told this and that, if that happens, I would like to verify through the county and everybody that you are able to put through there before I make that decision, because if they tell you, and I found this out on this whole project, what they told Bruce is completely different. If that's what happens, I want to make sure you guys are protected that that can happen before you were just told.
But is that our problem, not your problem? I'm not asking the property that you guarantee that we can use it as we need to use it. You know, we've suffered enough.
Well, it does become, I think, a township issue that we have to look out for everybody too, because then we're back to square one with having to find a location if we choose to move forward on this algae bill. So I think we have to look at it from the township angle as well as the angle from you guys. We have to see what our attorney would say for all of that, but we have to look at all sides of it. We're not trying to punish you guys at all, but it's our job to sit up here for the whole township too.
We're being punished by inaction. You know, you've been talking to Larry Scott, correct? And Larry Scott,
Yes.
he kind of talked to you yesterday,
I talked to him yesterday, yes.
and based on where we end up, what did he tell you I was gonna do?
He didn't tell me what you were.
Well, we need to move forward. I don't want to sue, but I will.
The township board certainly has the right to give the property back. But the deed restriction is simply that if in the event the property is not used for a wastewater treatment plant, then it must go back. Now, at the moment, you're still considering whether or not you're going to use it as a wastewater treatment.
So we don't have to give that back until we decide
That
that.
would be interesting to work with, it's on tape that already said the plan by November of '24.
yeah, now it's 26.
I was misled. I was misled when I donated the property. And it's my fault I didn't put more restrictions on the transfer.
I'm not aware of any of that part of it, but this board certainly has the right to give the property back. There's no doubt about it. If you decide to do that, you most certainly can.
Or we have the right to move forward if that's what we decide.
Correct. I don't know what transpired, I don't know what Artie said, I don't know what any of the rest of the deal was, I just know what the deed says.
Yeah, I want to support your project, but I've got to protect, I've got a business that's suffering because we aren't doing anything. And you guys have a million questions that have to be answered. You're a long way from deciding what you're going to build.
Where did 6,
75% complete on the drawings, and design of the plan.
They're waiting for us to give them the okay to do the engineering as soon as we hear back from this money that we sought.
Yeah, but then we're 3 years down the road before anything starts flowing.
Is that how far is that?
$250 million I'm gonna
Who knows, right?
So the drawings that you guys have 75% done, the township has a copy of, and that's public knowledge, or public information, correct?
If they were left in my office saying there's no copy
I
and
don't
nothing.
have a copy of my office.
Money was spent with your guys' engineering firm. So the and this is a simple question, the township has a copy of the plans, they have already paid for it, 75% complete.
They do.
Who did you guys give them to?
Who did you give them to, because nobody has a copy, except me. And the
I've
only reason I got this copy
I've
is
given a
because
copy
of
to
John.
Artie, and I gave a copy to Paul Cassidy.
And right here is what was left in that office on Algae
That
Wheel.
I answered to.
Tanya, you
Not
need to
anyway.
send to ask them for
Who's
that
that?
file and the PDF
Huh?
file
Who's
of
the
that
answer?
plan.
I will take care of
And I
it.
think I asked you to answer that, right, didn't I?
Say it just,
Yes, but and at the end of the day, we still have to pay them to get us that, so.
No, you
It's already
don't.
paid for.
You do not have to pay them to give you a set of plans.
No.
That's not how that works. I
That's
call my
correct.
engineer- I can call my engineer right now on 80 other projects and say, hey, send me a set of
All right.
plans. And within 24 hours, he sends them to me.
We'll have them get them plans back to where you're at on them, and
So I think it's important that we, whatever way we're going to go, whatever questions we need answered, I think we need to do it relatively quickly so that St. Susie Bar knows exactly where they got to go, and then we have to figure out where we're going after that.
right, correct, because there's a lot of work in this to just dead end, and like I said, at the end of the day, when I leave office, I will leave the project to leap forward, but here we are trying to figure out where it's at, right, which is wrong on your guys' behalf.
I'm just saying, I think it's important that whatever decision we make it as quickly as possible.
Correct.
I agree.
Did you, where was I at, Tanya, the Bevs? Bev's good, what about you, Mark?
I'm good.
I am good, and then,
I would like also updates at our regular meeting on this, so that everybody knows what direction we're going. The biggest problem was, the public wasn't informed.
Not only the public, half the board.
I had no clue. I thought it was being handled.
Right, like we weren't even informed on things that were
I
happening.
can tell you, it was handled poorly.
I said on the board, I have no comment, because I'm in the dark just like you guys are. Fully agree with
I
that.
mean, you guys spent $178,000 on plans that nobody has, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, taxpayer money spent real well.
Welcome to my job.
Hey, I'm all for you guys giving what you guys need, I do this for.
I think the first thing we need to do is figure out how many people in this
Yeah.
huge thing want
this.
Why? Because if you
Why?
got a require,
And then what is the cost of the scaling down one so that it does cover the San Souci downtown area, including what it's going to cost every year?
right.
We need to know those numbers.
Yeah, we need to be able to tell people how much they're, like, how much they're gonna have to pay to be hooked up to it. They're gonna need to know their bill.
Right.
I have something to say to the board. Once you guys let us know what direction, whether 85 or 8 or 10, whatever plant we're gonna go with, we can sit down with the people that run our plants, and I can have them give us a cost estimate of what it would cost to run the plant.
Okay.
That way we can, at least within a ballpark of 10, 15% of the cost, or however much we're gonna do. But 85 and 8 is a lot of.
It's a big difference.
That's a big number to go. 85 is gonna cost 85, and 8's gonna cost 40.
Ryan?
We probably won't have a true cost estimate until Eagle issues the actual permit on this plant, so.
It'll be within 10-15%.
It's gonna be a guessing game until then.
Good with 10-15%.
Yeah, once the discharge permit is in place, I would think that anybody
That takes everything we need to do.
anybody who runs a sewer plant should be able to give us a pretty good ballpark on that.
John, just so I'll throw this out, the price of 200 and the price of 130 were both, because there is a discharge permit already in place, and it was given on that permit.
But that's the larger system, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't, they just.
I thought we don't have any permits.
Not from Eagle.
Well, we don't now.
I was like, wait a minute. We were told we don't have any permits.
We did though, didn't we?
The
No, you
discharge
have
permit's
issues.
still intact, correct? The discharge permit's still intact. That's a 5-year permit, correct?
For the,
The discharge.
That's not been finalized.
no.
That's
that
what's
was
not been
with-
finalized through Kevin.
Okay.
You mean,
There's
you
been
mean the
no-
discharge from the plant to,
To the river, to the people who monitor what goes into the river, they gave us
Oh, no.
the rate, you know, what different things could be in the water, and then they gave us a number of testing.
that's good.
So they gave you the conditions that the project needs to be designed to.
Correct,
To meet
and that's where
permit
the
requirements.
engineer prices I got of 130, that was from Nick, and he said that might be on the low side, and the people who run the oil club said 200,000
To meet those requirements.
to meet those requirements.
Yep.
Chemicals, testing, everything involved.
But they're also the ones who told me then, they're treating this like Algae plant, where originally they were talked to about for just the downtown district, and if you discharge less than 2,000 gallons a day, max is a whole different program than, what is the max again, 25,000 on yours? The plan that you submitted to Eagle? The
what
discharge. The discharge.
The maximum.
It was up to 25,000 gallons a day. So, and that was the NPDES permit that was issued that gave us the clarity on how, to what degree did you have to treat the effluent leaving the plant at that location.
Oh, the NPDES
The
permit.
NPDES.
Yes.
Correct. So that one was issued. Whether that
Permit
is,
limits for
Yes.
the Part 41 permit.
exactly.
Yes, yes.
The Part 41 is the actual construction of the plant itself, and that was never issued. Never got to that point.
So Brian, if it was 25,000 or it was 5,000, how much testing?
There was a permit issued, it was 5 days a week, which would require 6 visits.
Okay, but that was for the bigger system, correct?
It would be legal, that wouldn't be up to me.
Yeah.
That'd be up to
I'm just saying, if it comes down, is there a threshold that
My
the
guess
testing
would be no, because
frequency?
This is untested technology.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I would say no.
No?
My guess would be no.
So if you're testing 1,000 or
It would be
25,000,
very strict because this technology is not in Michigan.
So if the type of wastewater treatment plant changed, testing might be less.
Oh,
Because this is an LG wheel, this has not been in Michigan, we would want to make sure.
The
that
Part,
this
the
is
Part
covered.
41 staff have never issued a permit to have wastewater treated like this in Michigan. So the proposed treatment technology has certainly complicated the Part 41 review process.
Well, and the NPDES district.
Yes.
Well, as we talk all this through, I just want you guys to really understand, if I don't get the property back, and it takes 3 years to build a plant, for the cost for me to donate a $35,000 piece of property will exceed $500,000. You can understand that. $500,000.
Could have bought silver.
Oh, the bar, below the island, take the bar.
Can we still use your funding if they get their property back? And then we look for another place for the algae plant to go? Can you still keep the funding then?
Yeah, it's for,
Yeah.
it's to the township.
I'm just
Because
going to
the
throw
town-
this out to you guys, because considering it's in the family of the previous supervisor, but there's the 40 acres of hardwoods at the end of Sneckenberger that the Brysons own, and if there's a high ground on the island, that's got to be it. And that'd be up to you guys. But it's all red and oak and shaggy bark hickory.
Well, I mean, we asked during the application process for impacts to wetlands, we asked them to find alternatives. Now, the cost analysis, the location of the proposed location, the wastewater treatment plant location was chosen because of the proximity to where they wanted to service. and the cost associated with expanding that and putting new pipe and so it's just a cost analysis.
So then you could, they could have what they want, a septic field.
They could have a septic field.
And she can give the money, and we can plan a place to put the new plant, because they do need one for downtown. They do need it.
So since
Bruce
it's not
don't
a
like
formal meeting, can I ask you a question? If we did a lot split
Wants us to
on
pay
that,
property for
and
the
we took
breaks,
the
and he said, "You don't
property
like this."
The two wetland delineation people, that .19 acres, they said isn't wetlands, put a septic field in there and let them still play with their lots, would that be?
Maybe. Yep.
We would have you utilize all the available uplands on the sites as possible before impacting wetlands. So,
Okay, so if you guys had non-wetland, and you still wanted to put the field in
I mean,
wetlands?
I didn't come up with that number, I don't know where .19
You're right,
comes from.
we'd ask you to put it in uplands. Yep.
at least the majority of it.
Right,
and
and then
encroach
must
into
have
the
been, I thought it
wetlands.
was you, that must have been the engineer then that we hired, said it was .19 acres.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the wetland delineation. I don't know where that is, because in my memory, and this has been a couple months since I looked at these plans, those 4 parcels are all wetlands except for the road right-of-ways.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Bruce, is that .19 outside the woods? Is that .19 outside the woods?
There's one big,
Because the woods are all wet.
yeah, no, there's one big, popple tree on that 1.19 acres, a huge popple tree.
Okay.
And,
Well, I will say right now that there's existing fill within the wetlands for the soil borders that we gave to the township. So if there's existing, that could be a location. I mean,
Yeah.
we would just have you mitigate the existing fill in that area.
Can I ask what the size of your proposed field is?
They were going to do that off the flows, all I told them is I had .19 acres. At the time it was Laurel Cameron, who worked for the county health department, but now it's Mike Malcolm, and he says if I have .19 acres, I have enough to do it with.
He didn't give you a dimension.
No, because we don't even own lots now, because I can't apply for a permit. I've got it sitting on the paperwork now for 2 weeks, because you can't apply for a permit on property you don't own.
Bruce, this is engineered field, not a natural soil field, correct?
Yeah, they're talking, now this lady again, she appears to have some weight in your company or business, but Marissa Feraldo was talking about possibly the tiles being 4 feet above it.
High water mark.
Yeah.
Well, our company is just protecting the environment. So
Well, I know.
I would hope that's the case.
Well, she's easy to work with, the woman is, it's just, at some point he decided if we were above a certain level, the all-time high water mark, that was undevelopable, and
You mean like floodway, 100-year floodway?
That's probably what you're dealing with, it's floodplain. Yeah, yep.
so.
Okay, so what's our next steps?
Our next step is to,
Survey,
Yeah.
solicit the.
solicit the property owners there.
I'd like that within the next week.
Roy?
Mark, you got a job.
Because-
The workshop, but I asked you for the fact that, how to say this, that we could, at least you'll sign off so I can get a permit for a septic field on that property, and we'll see if we can do a lot split, or we'll see if we have to take the lots back in court. But one way or another, we want to be moving forward.
That's a question for you.
Well, like I said, the board certainly has the authority to give them the lots back.
Well, I think he's talking about a lot split, like
Well, I'm
how,
talking about either way, I'm talking about moving forward. When you guys own the lots, I can't get a septic permit on your lots for my property.
Right, so
I have a question, Bruce. Do you guys, do you know where exactly you need to put your septic tank out of those lots? Like, could we give you like one lot back, would that cover?
No, it'd
Is
have to be-
it
it'd have
the
to
way
be
it goes? I'm just trying to paint a picture.
Run parallel to William Street, because, like I say, these would be the back end, the William Street side of all 4 lots that we would need.
Okay.
That people have treated as property.
Okay,
So it'd be a small strip on the back of each lot.
okay.
Basically 40 feet by,
40 feet by what?
Now, when you say permit, you're talking about St. Clair County permit.
Well, I guess, could it be,
We can do a preliminary on that, I think.
well, I'm wondering, Chris, I don't know if this is a question that Chris can answer, but is there a way to like keep the lots with the township while allowing them to utilize part of those lots for what they need? Like,
get a
is that?
No, he can't get a septic permit unless
He
he
can't get a
owns-
permit, he doesn't own the property.
The county's not gonna give him a permit to put a septic field on a lot that he doesn't own. The question is whether or not you wanna give him a portion back, how that would affect the final project, and whether or not his split would
Yeah, that's, yeah, you have to,
That's the assessment.
I gave them the
It's gotta meet
0.19 acre,
certain
and they told
requirements.
me that they
That's
could
in
put
your
it
ordinance,
in
in order to
that.
split it.
Here's, I can tell you
And
need.
if you do split it, then how does that impact the
project.
project going forward?
But you also need 15
That's
feet on
a
each side.
Bill
of the field.
question.
Yeah, because I mean, if you split it, are you gonna have a wastewater treatment plant adjacent to a septic field? I don't know.
so that's a question I can't answer to you that right now, according to Christine, on the lot split and all that, because that's something that has to be addressed through the assessing,
Start with the assessment.
and then to see if
And
we
then
can
would
even
legal
do that
even allow that, for us to have a wastewater treatment plant there with
on the
the septic?
remainder of it.
Yeah. Let's
What's
take
that,
it
John?
this way. Unless, there's no way unless you guys, the board, can do it anyway. I just thought, because you'd be creating a landlocked piece of property, so I thought you would never allow that anyway.
That was going to be my comment. If it doesn't have frontage on a public street, you wouldn't be able to create a lot split. So I don't know, maybe another option is to give the property back with an agreement, because the comment was made that could possibly still build the wastewater treatment plant on the site, that would it be possible to make an agreement that you guys get the property back, you build your septic field, but then that you agree to sell the township back the property or give it back to them, the remaining portion, or the whole thing with your septic field on it, to construct the plant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that a contract you could draw?
Pursue the other property owners nearby or whatever to see if there's an alternative location.
I like that
I
idea.
already said it, Roy, but you really do need to survey the area to see if you have any support for this, because we don't know where it came from. It was always commercial businesses, and then this kept growing.
Correct, or the reason why, from what my understanding, it kept growing is because of family septic tanks and things on the island. That was what they,
I think one person, people that lived there.
that was more than that. It's coming from people that are willing to give money for the project, right? That's then the deal of,
In that district, I can tell you there are two people that be willing to add money to it, because they want. They also have plenty of room. And I don't mean to sound bad, but if you got the money to spend $590,000 on a cottage, I think you can afford to put your own septic field in, and they have plenty
Correct.
of land. But they're just used to living in the city, and they like the idea of going to a plant.
so but I basically think that we got to do that, look for other projects, see what, I can't make that decision right now, is the way I feel on giving you back your property. Myself, if there's options to go forward, obviously, we have money slated for this project. I want to make sure that we're not liable, and that, like I said, I told you, at the end of the day, my job's to make sure everybody is taken care of correctly, right?
Yeah, let's clean
And
it
I
up.
apologize about what you've been through before I got here. I honestly do, because
I understand you can't fix what happened in the past. Your guys are working real hard to try to come up with a resolution.
Right.
A lot of people, you're collecting a lot of information, it's a lot of data to consume.
Right.
I would like to, let's do it this way, at least in theory, so I can get them going. Something from the township board saying, at the very least, should give us a lifetime lease on the property we'd need for a septic field, something to make it work. And that maybe your attorney could make something like that up rather than us paying our attorney to do it. Or something to make it work, where I can take it to
the health department and apply for the permit.
I thought you said the health department wouldn't give you a permit unless you own the property. So
Right.
a lifetime lease is not gonna help you.
Well, I don't know the finer, I don't think they actually know the finer details in that, because they're a bunch of nice guys, like just regular guys too.
I think the owner.
Those finer details make a difference though.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it's a lifetime lease, that's one thing. If it's an outright ownership, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's
So that's
an
something we
ownership
need to
issue.
find out. My guess is it's ownership.
I do. Well,
And then a lifetime lease, that's a muddled mess.
Right. And that's the life to say that.
Yeah, and who pays taxes on it?
Could the township build the septic field?
Not for a private.
At that point in time, it'd be a community
Right.
septic system.
And that
Think
falls
about
under a
why not?
different regulations that takes it into Eagle.
Put a swing set on, call it park.
Okay, well, let's collect our information and
All right.
reconvene hopefully quickly.
It works, so adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I do like the Johnson.